Hi everybody, it's John back here with another review. I'm going to do a review today on something which is very affordable to the young and the old, the inexperienced and the experienced. It's probably one of the cheapest models on the market. I'm going to do a review today on the Revell Nieuport N28C1, which you can see there. Before I go into the actual unboxing and everything, I just want to bring your attention to the computer if I can, because I want to go through some of the model's history, because this model is, although it's a nice new kit here, a lovely new kit here, it's actually a very old kit. This model was originally released in 1965, I think. That's the Type 1 box. So this kit is actually 52 years old. It was reboxed in 1966 in this box, and that ran through till 1974 when it went into this 3-picture coloured box, which the 3-photo view box, which I can remember being in the shops when I was a kid. And I did buy a few of the Revell biplanes and monoplanes that were available at the time in this type of boxing. I remember them very well. And then in 1989, Revell started reissuing their kits in lovely new blue boxes like this, until in 2008 we have the present box as seen here. Same one, you see. The interesting thing to note, I'll just bring you back to the table so you can see everything. The interesting thing to note is that this kit is really cheap. I think I paid £3.50 for this model in a local shop, so it's not going to break anyone's pocket money. But if you buy one of the older box variants, the cost goes up quite dramatically, as collectors obviously will pay more and more money for older box types. But about the average cost of an old style box, not including the Type 1 box from 1965, is about 12 quid. If you can find a Type 1 box, they usually go for between 15 and 25 quid. So if you want to build it, get it new from the shop. If you want to collect an old box, yeah, you might have to find a Type 1. You might find it hard to find a Type 1, but they are about. And you might have to pay up to about 25 quid for one in decent condition. I don't normally talk about the model subject's history very much, but I do want to ponder a little bit on the history of this particular aircraft, because the reason why I purchased the Nieuport N28 is because of the pilot who flew the plane. The Nieuport N28 was a breakaway from the Cessna plane type aircraft that Nieuports were building in World War One. And the N28 was actually a pure biplane, and it was absolutely loathed by the French Army de l'Air. They hated its guts. Honestly, they hated it with a passion. But the N28 became the backbone of the United States Air Service during World War One, and in particular, one of the highest scoring US pilots of World War One. The Nieuport N28 was his steed, and that was First Lieutenant Eddie Rickenbacker of the 94th Pursuit Group. And this particular kit has the markings for his plane, and I'm really, yeah, when I saw it I was really pleased. Yeah, let's have a go at this, because this looks quite good. So we'll open the box. The box is, you know, it's in their new type boxing. It's probably been on the market now for about 4 or 5 years. A lot of the bigger models that Revell do, a lot of the stash modelers who like to keep stashes of kits, they hate the new big boxes because they always collapse in the stash, because they're not really that well, you know, they're not strong on the sides. On the back of the box you've got a few adverts for different models that they do. There's the parts. The kit itself interestingly enough, is actually cast on one massive big sprue, but the sprue is so big that you can't fit it in the box, in any of the boxes they've ever released it in. So it usually comes in either two sprues, or two sprues and separate fuselage halves, which I've got in here. There's a pamphlet inside the box, which also usually contains your decals. We'll talk about those in a minute. This pamphlet is it's a standard pamphlet you get, safety advice and everything in 3 or 4 different languages. It's probably more like 5 or 6 different languages. But yeah, most modelers just discard that straight away. And your instruction leaflet, which for such a small box is actually quite large. The instruction leaflet gives you the usual history of the aircraft, history of the pilots and places in various different languages, and you get keys to the instruction leaflets, which are quite interesting to follow and everything understand. And then you've got a key code for all the paints used in the kit, and some safety advice on the bottom here as well. But it is a large instruction leaflet for a small model. A nice touch, which I think is nice in this part, is that this instruction leaflet actually gives you a plan of, I don't know if you can see it there, but it's a plan of all the parts on their sprues, which is quite handy because you can check to see if any of the parts are missing, and in this one they're not, which is great. Quite easy to follow instructions, exploded views of the detail and the parts and where they go, and there's not that many of them, and there's not a lot of detail, but it is a small kit, so I suppose, you know, you can forgive them for that. But it builds up through 8 steps, and the 8th step is really just how to apply the rigging on the model. So basically you're putting your engine assembly together first in step 1, and then the fuselage and pilot and seat goes in with the lower wing, and then you've got the engine and engine cowling and the tail empennage, the machine guns, the interplane struts, and then the upper wing, and then lastly you finish off with the struts for the tail empennage and the undercarriage axles and wheels, which is great. And then you've got a paint plan on this side, and this is where I get excited, because this is Eddie Rickenbacker's plane. You can see it there. All the paint guides are all there, and the keys and everything is all filled in. So it's really easy to follow. The instructions are quite well laid out and quite easy to understand. The decals. A lot of small cheap kits which you find on the market, especially recently. They've gone to town with their decals. Companies like Revell, Airfix, Tamiya, Italeri are the big 4 companies who have really pulled their socks up with the decals. The decals, if you can see them here, they're really, really smart, really well registered. They're nice and thin, nice and crisp. There's not an awful lot of borders to them, which would produce a sheen on the model when it's finished. The only thing that I find about World War I biplanes that have these full fin flashes here, as you can see here, is that you have to trim these really terribly right down so that the sheen is completely gone, and even then you still get a terrible finish. And it's often better just to paint the damn fin red, white and blue, because when you put the 2 decals either side of the fin, they never meet where the red flash and blue flash would normally meet at the edge of the rudder. So you always get this section of the rudder that's got 2 decals with a big gap at the back, and it just looks god awful. And I always find it's better to paint your rudders. But all the other markings, they should go on a tree. They look really nice. Really pleased with them. The register is fantastic. The little cover there for the decals, which is good. And we'll open the box. Open the bag, sorry. This is where things start getting interesting for me. nice small kit, and I mean a small kit. It only measures 3 3/4 inches in length. You've got your 2 fuselage halves, which are here. Not a lot of detail in them, to be honest with you. The interior is basically a pilot seat and a pilot. The first sprue encompasses the lower wing, the propeller, the interplane struts, the pilot seat, and the engine. It's a Reveiw engine in this plane, which was actually a 9-cylinder rotary engine. And you have a machine gun on the, I think that's a machine gun on the corner there. And the second sprue, you have the rudder and tailplane, engine cowling, the engine bulkhead, 2 more interplane struts, although I think they're the ones that go on the actual wings themselves. You've got a windscreen, we'll talk about that in a minute, undercarriage axle, 2 more struts for the tailplane, the wheels, the retainer pin for the propeller, and there's 2 machine guns on there, so that must just be a piece of end of sprue that does nothing. I'm just going to put my glasses on quickly because I want to take you through a couple of things about this kit. Now, I normally try and aim my videos for inexperienced modelers, people that are new to the game, people that are younger maybe, they haven't had an awful lot of experience in building models, and I like to try and aim to review a model to give them an idea of what to look forward to and what to maybe avoid, like the plague. And this particular kit is certainly not a model to avoid like the plague, because it's reasonably accurate, but it has got a few issues. But the issues, apart from one of them, are not really worth worrying about if you're an inexperienced modeler. Basically, the upper wing, this is the upper wing here, the cutout for the upper wing is actually a little bit large, and you need to use a piece of plasticard in here to fill this gap here, but it's got to be the same shape because the actual gap itself is only about 3% too large. So to the inexperienced modeler, I wouldn't really worry about it because nobody's going to notice. But if you're an IPMS modeler trying to put a plane into maybe a competition or so, then you might need to know about that. The other issue is that the upper and the lower wings themselves are actually slightly too short in span. But again, it's only about 3%. I don't really know why it's 3% in all these 3 figures, but it is. And maybe Revell, when they were doing the engineering on the kit, maybe they made a mathematical mistake, but it is. But to the inexperienced modeler, it's just not worth worrying about because the amount of time and effort you would have to do to correct these issues, you wouldn't notice it unless you were looking for it, unless you knew how to measure it. There is one issue, however, with this model that I think could be a problem for even a semi-experienced modeler who wants to do something a little bit more adventurous. The Nieuport N28 had a Reveiw engine which actually had 2 large vents and a small vent inside the engine cowling, as you can see on the picture there. There's 2 vents, 2 underneath, and 1 on the top. But as you can see on the engine cowling here, there's only 1, and that's not really a vent, it's just a notch. And the other 2 are missing. And to be honest with you, if you were to try and put those vents into that cowling, I think you would probably do more damage to the kit than what you would good. Because like a lot of the parts in this model, the detail and the scaling of the model is what I class as quite heavy. I think the actual plastic itself to make the cowling is very thick, as you can see there. there's no way an engine cowling on a real plane would ever be that thick. It would probably be about 4 times thinner than that. Even the wings themselves are a little bit, I mean, that's a little bit bowed, as you can see. That's nothing you can, you know, you shouldn't really have a problem with that. But the other thing that I've noticed on this kit is it has a windscreen. And if you can see it there on the picture, can you see it there on the picture? It's actually a piece of plastic with a hole in it. Now, to a lot of inexperienced modelers, they would probably just use that, and maybe if you wanted to, you could put some clear fix into it to produce a window. But to be honest with you, it's really quite bad, and I think I would probably prefer to try and use a piece of plasticard, clear acetate sheet, and make my own, because that is pretty awful. But like a lot of the parts in this kit, they are quite heavy in detail. The parts are quite thick, and they're quite clumsy in the way they're detailed out. Also, the fabric texturing on the wings and the fuselage, they're a little bit overdone, but to be honest with you, the wing ribs, they could probably just do with a tiny bit of sanding down, but that's about it. But the pilot, yeah, he looks like he's mummified, doesn't he? And the pilot seat, yeah, I think that could be a little bit too big, but we'll see when the plane gets constructed together and everything. So anyway, overall, the release date on the kit was 1965. The model itself measures 3 3/4 inches in length. It's 4.5 inches in span on the upper wing, and 1.5 inches high. It'll stand 1.5 inches high on its undercarriage. It's produced with 27 grey plastic parts on 2 sprues, and the decals are for the First Lieutenant Eddie Rickenbacker C-28 in the United States Air Service 1918. It's the plane he scored 26 victories in with the 1st Pursuit Group 94th Aero Squadron. And the interesting thing about the N28 Nieuport is that Revell is the only company to produce this model in 1/72 scale. I do believe you can get it in 1/48th or maybe 1/50th from a company called Glencoe, but I haven't seen the subject of this kit modelled in 72nd scale from anywhere else. And as we said before, the windscreen and the interior is really a terrible joke, isn't it? But it's only worth dealing with all this if you're an experienced modeller and you're used to adding parts of plastic sheet and filler, and you've got the time and money on your hands to deal with all this. The cost of the kit itself is only £3.50 in the shop, but it can, as I said before, cost about 20 to 25 quid if you want to buy older release second-hand models for collections. And overall, I think it's not a bad model. Yeah, it's got its faults, but they're very minor, and they're not really worth correcting unless you are a serious modeller. It's very cheap to buy, and it looks like it's going to be a fun kit to build and very quick in its making. So, also the other thing that's interesting about this kit is that the French Air Force, they did a lot of their aircraft up in plain brown and khaki, and they were pretty boring, to be honest with you. But the United States Air Service, they actually painted their planes light grey underneath. They were like a bluey sea grey underneath, but they used two-tone green and brown camouflage, and their markings were bright red, white and blue. They were really, they stood out a mile, and the plane's very colourful. So, as I said, fun kit to build. It'll be a colourful display and a good addition to anyone's 72nd scale model list. So I hope you had fun listening to this, and I hope that this video has helped you in some way. And if you're after a Rickenbacker's plane, get out in the shop and buy one of these, because I think it's good value. Thanks a lot, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.